Well, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's my first time to Anchorage, and I'm like, this is great. We got out yesterday, and we were biking and enjoying. We saw the moose, which is unusual for us in Bend, Oregon. We don't have that. Although we have a lot of nature and beauty where we live, you should come visit us. I love this idea about history. When I came in, I'm like, oh, I like that so much. And how many people think in history it's us now who should start preventing diabetes? Okay, I hope to have even more excitement afterwards. Because I think it is. I think it's time. What happens is I sit with my lovely wife, who's brilliant, and other brilliant endocrinologists, and I hear about all these things in detail, huge detail, and I'm like, we have to prevent this. We have to keep people from this. We don't do prevention in the world, I don't think, and in the United States, it's time. It's time to do it. And do we have tools? We have tools. Do we have knowledge? We have knowledge. Now, we're doing research right now with Libre, looking at patients that don't have diabetes and those with prediabetes. And we're seeing if we can find a difference in how we look with CGM at those patients. We're finding some things out. We're working with Dr. Richard Bergenstahl, and talk about history. The reason we have a diagnosis with hemoglobin A1C is Richard Bergenstahl. The reason we looked at prediabetes, he didn't want to, by the way. He didn't think there was enough data yet to say that, oh, we can call this prediabetes. Because how do we know who's progressing? Do people progress? Yes. 70% of those with the diagnosis of prediabetes progress on a diabetes in their lifetime. But how do we tell? So I brought this subject up, and this is my lecture I gave at the scientific session at the ADA, which was pretty cool to be on the big stage in that thing and to bring it up. And as those people in the room were, okay, I wanted like thousands of people in the room, and there weren't. But this lecture was far-reaching. I had meetings with vice presidents at the ADA, and they said, ooh, you make us nervous. How are we going to address this? And I will say, and this is, I'm sure, the right group, with passion and care, right? You just tell someone you have a chronic disease. So the first statement should be, we can do this. I can help you. I have tools. I have 1 tool, 2 tools. Probably one of the things in knowledge and learning is I have 9 tools, and they can choose their path. They can choose which way they want to go to help prevent this disease. So I reclassified it. What does that mean? Here's some disclosures. And of course, the one is with the research that we're doing right now. What does that mean, reclassifying? So my thought with some science was maybe we talk about prediabetes stage 1, prediabetes stage 2, early diabetes with an A1C above 6. I don't know that that's right. And one of the things that now a few years later, and lots of research is we need to start early. In diabetes, the earlier we start treating someone, the more we can preserve the cell, because it's the cell that's the issue, right? When I lecture to students, I say, I was teaching medical school a few years ago, so if a blood sugar is 320 or it's 120, it doesn't matter. These brilliant students, 100 of them, just stared at me like he's trying to trick us. They didn't answer. I said, is it harmful? Yeah, it's bad. Why is it bad? Okay, this is physiology according to Miller, so the physiologists are like rolling like, oh my gosh. Our body's made for 70 to 140. 70 to 180, you could argue, but 70 to 140, the system will wear for 100 years. Higher doses, higher amounts of glycemia have a wear and tear effect. And we talk about microvascular disease and macrovascular disease. Now, it's fancier. I don't know if you've heard cardiorenal metabolic disease is another way of saying it affects the whole body. We're connected. I'm a primary care doctor. We've never disconnected the body, but it's connected, and so we care about micro and macrovascular disease. The first thing in lowering A1C is I can protect the eyes, the kidneys, and the nerves. But then, can I protect heart disease? That's longer, or it's what tool you choose. Should we do that in diabetes, or should we do that in prediabetes as well? Because it's really early on. We're seeing changes early on. So I'll talk to you a little bit about the risks of people, review the current diagnosis, consider other ways of looking at prediabetes. So my wife, actually, she's super clever, and you'll see that later. So she came up with this, and I've loved it and tried to incorporate it into lots of lectures. I think the number is 38 million people now with diabetes, and 98 million people with prediabetes. Again, this is a tsunami coming to our shores, and it's gonna, are we ready for it? You are getting ready. You are the people at the front lines, but it's a metabolic disease in our modern era of diabetes, right? I was reading an article in the 1980s, most people with type 2 diabetes were normal weight. And so this new thing, do you know we treat diabetes, obesity, the number one risk for this is living today. We live today. My clinic wouldn't exist in 1970. So what did my patients, what fault did they have? They were born now, they didn't have a choice. They can't go back to your parents and say, what were you thinking? You put me at risk because I'm born today. We'll figure this out. We'll figure out the modern world, but we're not there yet. And so there's so many people, you know the estimates is this is worldwide disease. I don't know if you think about like I do. India, huge problem. China, the Middle East, Brazil. I was talking to a patient of mine from Brazil. She went home and she wanted her traditional food. And she goes, where are all the veggies and stuff that normally come with this? And like, oh, we don't like those now. It's everywhere. Diet has changed all over the world, and it's led to these new health problems. So I looked up some data, and you probably know this, and it's probably been reviewed already, so forgive me if you've already known this, but you know, there's basically, with prediabetes, 182,000 people, or 33% of the adult population, the estimates according to the authorities here in Alaska. So what is prediabetes? You probably already know this. Hemoglobin A1C. Why is it A1C? So Dr. Hrabha from Iran in 1969 found a different cell type. So there was already A1A and A1B, so he chose the next A1C. Isn't it clever how we come up with names? And he was probably super brilliant. And he saw this cell type, and guess what? It was higher in people with diabetes. So we have this glycosylation that happens, and a red cell is just a way of plucking a cell that lives for 3 months out of the system and looking at the average blood sugars. I tell this to patients, and like, that's what that is? Oh, okay. I love giving them more, telling them about their disease so they're experts too. Fasting blood sugar. You know it was 110 when Dr. Richard first did this with Dr. Bergenstahl. Europe likes 110. We've changed it to 100 to include more people so then data equal that with A1C. Is that right? Is that the right number? The fasting blood sugar is the least predictive of all our tools. The postprandial, who's doing an OGTT? What pregnant woman wants to do an OGTT? They're like, oh yeah, I remember that sweet drink. Is there other ways to do it? So we talk about, impaired fasting, normal glucose, impaired glucose tolerance. So I just want you to think of these different terms as we talk a little bit about prediabetes, and we'll talk about our research. So basically the more intensive group is, I already mentioned, is above 6. Why? Because there's data that shows that those people are at higher risk. They're firmly into changes, perhaps. We can predict more that wasn't just a random problem that you had a blood sugar of 107. How many have themselves worn CGM? Oh, that's awesome. Me too. I've had Libre on one arm and Dexcom on the other. And can I tell you, I almost lost privileges. Because I'd wake up in the morning and say, my blood sugar's 107, honey, I'm pre-diabetic. She says, I'm going to take that away from you. And then I wore a different one, and it wasn't. We all know this, right? We know that it's a good tool. It's not a perfect tool. But it is a good tool, and it's a different way of looking. None of these are perfect, right? A1C, what if you're pregnant? It might not be accurate. What if you have a hemoglobinopathy? It might not be accurate. What if you're anemic? You have fewer red cells. So it's not probably as accurate. But we take these things as a collection. I'll show you. That might be how we look at the future. Do you know the KDIGO heat map that's used in chronic kidney disease, they chose 2 different ways of choosing chronic kidney disease. They looked at the blood, estimated GFR, filtration through the kidneys, which, by the way, gets less every decade because we lose glomerula. We get older. And then we use the urine microalbuminuria, so small bit. So we use 2 ways to determine what level of chronic kidney disease. By the way, everyone with diabetes has probably stage 3 chronic kidney disease, and we can keep them there. We can preserve their kidneys. So we're looking at something like that, and I'll tell you a bit more about it. So why did I include this? Was at the ADA, I wanted to convince people, and I decided to leave, basically the same slides for you. So basically, the OGTT is more predictive, and you can see that in the data than a fasting blood sugar. Why? Because you've stressed the system, right? When you're fasting, you really haven't stressed the system, right? But you eat something, right? You have the first phase release of insulin, or you're supposed to, and then you can try putting food in. That's an oral glucose tolerance test. We give you a lot of food, right? I don't know. I really should calculate what it is. 2 pancakes, syrup, orange juice, something like that is the OG, 75 grams of glucose. So I want to just point out that as we look at it in different ways, gender, age, the postprandial is a more predictive test. So who's at risk? We can know this a little bit. I want to go to the very bottom first and work up. They changed it, everyone over 35, to reflect our time in history, right? So, wow. But then, if you look at the other part, if you look at those with children, if they're overweight, then we should be checking them. So it's a lot of our population who we should at least screen for prediabetes and diabetes. Do you know what percentage of people with prediabetes are aware of their diagnosis? Someone said 10. It's 19. So better than 10. So I can give you some optimism. But how we take care of them is so important. I don't want you hear this. I probably hear this. A dear patient who's Hawaiian, she said, my mom was said, you better take care of this or you're going to lose your vision and you're going to lose your legs. Did she want to go back to that appointment? So instead, I loved saying, these are gauges. Let's look at the gauges. Look at your fasting blood sugar gauge. Oh, it's 107. Let's look at your A1C gauge. Oh, it's 5.8. Let's look at your blood pressure gauge. All your gauges are in the yellow. And you take your beautiful car in and you take hey, Bob, my best mechanic, all the gauges are kind of off. I don't know what to think of this. I'm the best mechanic for this, for diabetes, for prediabetes. I'm like, oh, you're right. You're in the yellow. I can do something. We can do weight loss. We can do medicines. We can do all sorts of things, some supplements. And so there's many things we can do. Who should we screen? Of course, those with a history of gestational diabetes. Different ethnic groups, including Alaskan Natives. And that's why I'm so glad to be here. Someone who's had an elevated hypertension, low HDL, metabolic syndrome, right? Basically, that's what these all things go. Why? Because the cells are changing altogether. So that's why we're looking at metabolic disease. Acanthosis nigricans, if you see that. So basically, so many people should be screened. If you want to, you can use this tool. It's at the ADA website. You could have it in your waiting room. You could have it somewhere, and you just add up. And if your points are more than 5, that you're at risk and should be screened. So I think they changed the top one, but this is what the ADA had on their site when I did this lecture, 40 and above. But now it's 35 and above. This is Dr. Bergenstahl's work, and from the International Diabetes Center. He is amazing, and it points out the fact that you have insulin resistance. By the way, why? Nobody on earth knows why. Patients ask me, I'm like, no, as far as I know, no one knows why, right? So I have literally, if you watch my lecture on, I'm chair of the Diabetes Primary for the American Diabetes Association, and I wrote one of the modules, and I wrote it on, guess what, prediabetes. And so I drew a cell. They said, hey, Dr. Miller, when you get done, by the way, I recorded this hour lecture, and I was all nervous and everything, and they used 5 minutes of my talking, and they have this wonderful person who speaks in the background, and And these are all free. So you can go to the ADA site and you can download this, and you can go through all the diabetes is primary and get credit for CME or CE credits for free. You can watch mine. Tell me what you think. I'd love to hear back. I'd love to hear, like, you should have included this, or why didn't you add that? I did 4 patients this time. I actually did a type 1 patient, very different subject, of course, but Tzield is out there. So the point of it is that resistance happens for most people with type 2 first. And the beta cell is pretty cool. Let me just give you more insulin. For me, I'm Portuguese. So for the people of European heritage, we can do this for 7, 8, 9 years, where my body increases how much insulin it can produce until it gets tired or burn out or destroyed. We're not exactly sure, or changes cell type. It might change cell type and it can't produce insulin. By the time someone's diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, at least 50% of their beta cell is burnt out. I don't like that. My patients don't like that. They look at me and I'm like, yeah, let's not go there. Let's not go there. Let's keep you at 40% of the beta cell burnout, 30. Even at 50, 60, or 70, I can use all my medicines, right? What percent of the beta cell is burnt out in type 1? I don't know. 98? I don't know. We all think sometimes type 1s have a little insulin. You're like, what happened with today's blood sugars? But most of it's wiped out, right? Autoimmune disease. In this case, we don't know why why the resistance at this cell happens and why we have to produce, but we can produce for years and years. That hyperinsulinemia state is not really healthy for the vessels either. But finally, we lose that, as it shows here, and then up go your blood sugar, and then we diagnose you with diabetes. Does prediabetes put you at risk? Yeah, as you see, as I've already talked about, we have an abnormal state in the blood vessels. So you're at risk for stroke, you're at risk for heart disease, you're at risk for retinopathy, neuropathy, kidney disease. So as I was preparing for this and for the research we're doing, when we looked at an A1C just of 5.7 or fasting blood sugar of 100, those patients really didn't have increased risk of heart disease. What? It took it getting higher. It was 110. And so these things can be debated, but that to me says we got to learn more. We need to be a little more predictive of who we say has prediabetes. But they're at risk. They're already at risk for heart disease. In this study, they looked at, I'm sure it was a resident who was, right, or someone trying to get their PhD, so they took all this data together and they brought it all, 1.6 million people with prediabetes, and they looked at the 3-point MACE, do you have cardiovascular disease, stroke, all-cause mortality, and they went up by 20%, and 32% in prediabetes. So should we wait till someone has diabetes to treat them? Should we wait till their A1C goes up to 8 to add something more? No, not if we can help it. Now, I say all that. I let my patients find their journey. I give them education and teach. I hit them with so many things they feel overwhelmed. Like, I give up, Dr. Miller, I give up. I'll do something. And I'm there for that person, not for this data. Healthcare is about the person we care for. And I know the data, as you see, and I do the data backwards and forwards, and I help the ADA find out what numbers are right. But it's that patient in front of me, that's what matters. I use the data to help them. You might see the healthcare system is shifting. Insurance thinks it's all about the numbers. We get better numbers. And I think it's because I focus on that person and what their needs are. So what about another group? This was so interesting. 8 to 44. I don't think those people are at risk. Oh my gosh, they're at risk. They had more heart attack than their peers without prediabetes. Who were those people? I was telling my wife we need to not only look at A1C, but we need to look at, in our prediabetes prediction, obesity, hyperlipidemia. If they're African American, Hispanic, those people are at greater risk. They had more heart attack. So we need to help prevent those things in their lives. Every year, about 10% of those with prediabetes convert. Those with an A1C above 6 is 20 to 25 over a 5-year period. That's why they're at greater risk. So what can we do? Can we help them? So I think we can. 98 million people is a lot. You're already busy. Sorry. Sorry for making your schedules crazy by putting in people with prediabetes. They're pretty fun. It's pretty fun. I do it all the time. I get referrals for prediabetes. You know, people are like, what? How many FDA medications are approved for the prediabetes? Metformin is not pre-approved for it's not approved at all. They're just like, it's old. Sure, go ahead. Use metformin. That's fine. But it's not approved. Nothing's approved. Should it be? Do I want everyone on medicines? No. No. Do I want those people who are at desperate need on medicines or have access? Yes. Because some of our medicines do some amazing things. So this is why I had proposed stage 1 and stage 2, and you'll see, like I told you, I left this in to kind of show you how people think at the ADA and what's going on behind the scenes and why we choose things. This might not work. You might go, oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, it didn't work. They didn't like it. So basically, the 5.7 to 5.9 is maybe we'd call that early, because we don't know where those people go. They'll go across. Do you know what percentage of young people with prediabetes convert back to normal? 50%. So they're really unpredictable. Your 18-year-old, you know, I see those kids too. It's pretty sad. You know, I see them with type 2, the young kids with type 2. Our practice were primary care. So we see 3-year-old with type 1 diabetes and 93. We see 16-year-old with prediabetes or type 2 and 93. And that's great fun. But then I suppose that late stage or early type 2 diabetes might be an A1C of 6, a fasting blood sugar above 110, a 2-hour above 153. And then there's that coefficient of variability. Do you recognize that from CGM? The Honolulu Heart Study showed us. So if you look at A1C, does it prevent cardiovascular disease? Lowering it? No. What's up with that? There was a study that showed someone was at A1C of 8 for 10 years and went to 7 for 10 years. They decreased their risk of cardiovascular disease by 7%. There's a study that compared them to 7 for 10 years and 7 for 10 years. They decreased it by 36%. A1C macrovascular disease is slower except for what tool you use. There's tool now that we have that can lower cardiovascular disease, right? SGLT2s, GLP-1s. We got lucky. We didn't know they were going to do this. No one set out to say, we're going to see if we can do. We just want you not to hurt people, said the FDA. But they lowered heart disease. So the tools we use help. What about exercise? What about weight loss? Those have a cardiovascular benefit. So we want to do both. So these are the curves. I mean, this is behind the scenes stuff, right? This is my beautiful wife who found all these and put down, okay, stage 1, look, your risk is increasing with fasting blood sugar, with postprandial blood sugar. And these are why we're choosing these numbers with this early. What about coefficient of variability? What about that variability? I stopped and I didn't finish telling you that the Honolulu Heart Study basically showed if you have the same A1C, right, it's an average. So if you're here with the average or you're here with the average, this higher variability caused more cardiovascular disease. Tighter control decreased it. That was pretty cool. Because we didn't know before what big difference we could do with controlling A1C. I was in a meeting and these brilliant endocrinologists, and they said, in the data, the A1C did not improve heart disease. And they went, oh, maybe we shouldn't be trying so hard. I like eyes and nerves and kidneys too, and we can protect those that year by lowering the A1C. Can we protect heart? Yes. But there's other ways, getting that time in range. And we can see that now with our CGM. We can see, and we might be using this, help us to figure out diagnosis of prediabetes. So basically, stage 2, you see that the reason these numbers were chosen, 6.0 to 6.4, because the slope of the curve really takes off for those at risk. And then also with postprandial, see the slope of the curve really takes off with the blood sugar above 153. And so basically that's where these super smart people sit down and say, what number should we choose? Where should we choose to tell people? And the coefficient of variability, we definitely see a difference over a coefficient of variability of 25. So when people are having that variability, you who don't have you looked at your A1C? It's just like this. It's pretty awesome if you don't have diabetes. It's like, wow, it's just pretty level. All the systems are working. So many beautiful, intricate things are working. You're releasing energy from the liver. You're putting glucose into the cell. Your insulin's releasing at just the right time. First phase, even if it's donuts, it just comes out first phase and it just takes care of it. And your blood sugar goes to 138, But those who don't have that first phase, who have insulin resistance, who are starting to up their blood sugars go, and then their body tries to catch up, and then they go low, right? People ask me, I have a lot of lows. Is that a risk? Yes. You're overproducing insulin. Can I use insulin as a marker for prediabetes? Probably not, because first it's high, right? We have hyperinsulinemia, and then it's low because now you're burning out. Where are you on that spectrum? We've shown with an A1C of 5.7, we don't know. We can't tell. Someone might be high, they might be low. So what about CGM? How many of you are using CGM in patients, interpreting it, helping them with that? Okay, it's coming. It's this powerful tool. I think we'll use it more and more, and the more experts we have in applying it, using it, I think the better off we'll be. Is it perfect? It's not perfect. We all know that it shows, especially in hypoglycemia, the numbers can be off. Your folks with it, type 1, they know. They just go, today was a weird day. I don't know what to think of that data. But it provides you information that you can individualize for the patient and help them to see what's going on in real time. It's an OGTT all the time, right? So you go send someone the OGTT, they hate it, they go, put this on, you got an OGTT all the time. You see it over and over. What'd you eat right here? You can ask them. So the 3 pillars of diabetes is really diet, medication, exercise. We need all of those things. People who basically were shown these things in a survey felt they had a better lifestyle by using CGM. The CGM helped them. We call it a risk assessment, risk adjustment tool. We put them on. Matter of fact, when we're looking at this, when we're looking at using CGM to help diagnose prediabetes, we're going to have to blind it. It's that powerful. If we let people see what's going on, then they'll make adjustments. They'll make changes in their own life, and they'll change their eating, and they'll change it. We have to blind it first for the first couple weeks so we can see what's going on in general. I thought you were saying, you're done. So how do we screen? Do we use the fasting blood sugar, A1C, OGTT, CGM? We're going to talk a lot about, can we use CGM? Okay, so now you've diagnosed it. What do we have? The one big thing we have is the diabetes prevention program. Do you have that here, and is it a free program locally, or? So I worked with our Central Oregon Health Council for 3 years, and we brought it to our Tri-County area for 3. Something happened to it. You might have heard of this, COVID. Did you hear about that? And it killed it. And so we have one virtual program now, which really makes me sad. So people who exercise 30 minutes, 5 days a week, you can put weightlifting in there 2 days a week, who lose about 7%, they don't have to get to their weight goal. You're not saying, get to your weight goal. No, you just start losing weight, 5%, 7%. And those who are eating a more healthy diet. A lot of dietitians are like, oh, the diabetes prevention program, low saturated fat, really? The American Diabetes Association goes, use vegetarian, lose Mediterranean, use DASH, but healthy eating. Those people have a 58% reduction in developing diabetes. It's a powerful tool. It's compared to metformin. How did metformin do? 31%. It's okay. It's okay. Metformin probably works at the liver and tells the liver not to make more glucose. It's like, knock it off. You're supposed to not make glucose when food comes in, but it wants to help out. It's a nice liver. It wants to help out, so it makes more glucose, and up goes your blood sugar. So your blood sugar goes up from eating in type 2 diabetes, and then it goes up even more because the liver throws it out. Guess who else works there? GLP-1s. And so they help out a lot. So this lifestyle program is just very, very powerful. The follow-up still showed 34% reduction. You don't do that. I don't do this. I'm going to treat you for 2 years, and then I'm going to ignore you from now on out, and we'll see what happens later. We don't do that. I tell my patients, we can do a lot better than 34% 10 years because we're still going to be doing this. I tell them I'm greedy. I might seem nice. I think he's kind of a nice guy, but actually I'm greedy. I tell my patients, I don't want 2 years. I want the rest of your life. We're going to change your life. Figure out what it is. I don't care. It can be all sorts of things. I like dancing. I have a patient who says, I dance. I said, what do you dance? And she goes, I go to this class with a bunch of girls. And I'm like, okay. Coming like, what class is it? You've never told me. Dr. Miller, it's called Sexy Babes. And they laugh, and they don't feel like they're exercising, and they have a great time. It's really fun. Are we the only ones? Is the diabetes prevention program the only one that we found? No. Lots of programs have showed that lifestyle have great results. In Japan, they had amazing results. But a lot of countries have shown that lifestyle can make a difference in prediabetes state. What about our medicines? So we have basically 8 medications for weight loss. My patients turn to me and they go, Dr. Miller, in all your speech and stuff, you said if I lose weight, it can help prevent diabetes. What do we got for that? You know, old orlistat, where you don't absorb fats in the gut, has reduction. Phentermine has reduction. Phentermine topiramate, 79%. Liraglutide, semaglutide. Metformin, as I already mentioned, 31%. Pioglitazone, Actos. Actos is still in there. I don't know why we don't use it. Yes, in heart failure, it's not the best idea. You can get swelling. Do I use it in low doses? Not in heart failure patients. Do I use it in low doses regularly? Yes. If I put it on it with an SGLT2, what happens? Neutral, pretty much, because I'm getting rid of fluids with one, and it's preventative. Now, am I choosing that for prediabetes? Not as much, not as much. You know, if you look at the bottom trizepatide, I think you just had a lecture, and I actually lecture for them too, on sleep apnea. So I have someone who's pre-diabetic and sleep apneic. Guess what tool I have now? Does it have cardiovascular benefit? They weren't allowed to tell you that. I can. Yes. You know, does it have all these other benefits in there? Yes. And so we've got some really powerful tools. Now, most of them they're off-label, right? It's off-label. And so where do we start with the patient? Do you realize I will talk to my patients about the ominous octet. I'll talk to them about all their different diseases, and I'll give them choices. Metformin's there, right? They said, my doctor wanted me to start metformin, or I've already been on metformin. Great. That's good. We have some good results with that. Does it have some weight loss? Probably. Do we need to monitor B12 once a year? Yes. But I talked to them about the ominous octet. Have you heard about that? Awesome. I think it's a great tool. Our good friend Bill Polanski said impossible. 8 things in an appointment, I might get to 2, but they understand that something's happening in the cells of their body, right? I mentioned already that insulin resistance, the increase of insulin production, that happens in the muscle and liver. I mentioned that the liver won't. Do you know the kidneys upregulate? If I had a med student, I was saying, hey, I'm going to put glucose in your system and raise your blood sugar to 180. Above 180, they would pee glucose. Our patients with diabetes, they can get to 300 and not pee glucose. The sodium glucose transporters block that, and then they pee away glucose. Do you know French scientists found this way back in the 1800s, but we didn't know what to do with it. We didn't know how to make it safely. Now we just block that receptor and people pee away the extra. We were worried that it would hurt the kidneys. It seems to help the kidneys. We didn't know what to do with heart disease. It improves heart disease. So we have powerful tools. This is really a kind of a repeat in more detail about how the different medications. So medications might play a role in treating people with prediabetes. I do it already. I'm doing it under other diagnosis. They might be treating obesity. I tell them, one of my patients said, these medicines are so good with weight loss and prediabetes, and do I need to worry about diet? So I bring them in this study that shows clever doctor, 50 years as an obesity specialist. And he said, is it important? So you show basically the weight loss and the cardiovascular benefit with just the medicines. And then he goes, and look at those who exercise, sleep well, decrease stress. It's a huge separation. Lifestyle with this. Plus, You're going to lose muscle, right? If you're losing weight, you'll lose 1/3 muscle, 2/3 fat. So we got to build muscle. Plus, you lose muscle just with age. I don't like that because I'm getting older. I don't know how that happened, but it's happening. And so I want to build muscle. So our patients need to build muscle, right? It's a new life again. It's building muscle. It's getting strong. It's picturing yourself being healthy as you age. And then we have lots of tools that we can use. So basically, I'm saying, can we use the American Diabetes Association's algorithm that we already have in treating people with this? Can we put that in there and just go, hey, you have chronic kidney disease. I need to use an SGLT2. You have obesity. I need to use one of our other tools, maybe a GLP-1. Yes. Do I do it all the time? Yes. Do I see people who go from an A1C of 8 to 6? Yeah, safely, right? There's still the studies who said maybe it's not safe. They're not having hypoglycemia. They're having reduced risk of cardiovascular disease, renal disease. So we're using these tools to help them. We call that diabetes remission through medication. They actually had a big conference about this. All these brains said, okay, what do we call this? Is it, if you go on a super low carb diet, that was the first way they showed diabetes remission. The hard thing is who can do that other than one of our friends, Breeze. She can do it. But most people can't keep that up for decades. So then they looked at, what about if we use medications and you still achieve normal A1C, 4.5 to 5.5? That's remission. Your body, all that damage that might be happened from the hypoglycemic state is not happening. What about bariatric surgery? I admit sometimes I hold that one back and I shouldn't. I've had patients come to me and say, Dr. Miller, you didn't really mention this. It's a powerful tool. If it's going to save someone's life, it's going to prolong their life. What about that? It's very powerful in prevention. It probably works on their hormones in their body to help prevent them. I want to talk to you a little bit again about the study we're doing and basically looking at more than one mechanism. So that coefficient of variability, how much you go up and down. So again, we looked at the KDIGO heat map for chronic kidney disease, and we looked at more than one thing. What we're finding is, so far in our research, is if we just look at A1C, is it predictive? It's pretty good. If we look at fasting blood sugar, is it predictive? It's not very good. It's so variable. If we looked at post-meal, it's pretty good. But the best seems to be if we look at A1C in that coefficient of variability, how high, how low. We don't know. We're looking at also slope of the curve. If someone's blood sugar takes off like this and then plummets down, does that predict about who's going to develop diabetes? Dr. Bergenstahl recently at our last meeting this last week is going to ask the NIH for money to look at our patients in this trial. It's a national trial. To see those with prediabetes with CGM and those with non-diabetics with CGM. So if we can see a difference. So we're going to ask for a 3-year follow-up with them who went on to develop diabetes. So we can check more predictively of who did that. Right now, we think that what you're going to have in your hand is something where you're going to look at A1C and coefficient of variability, something where you're going to look at both. So you're going to have more tools to then predict which people will progress on to diabetes. And I hope that, you can sit with them and say, this is happening. When you introduce a chronic disease to someone that's the rest of their life, wow. Usually, sometimes I get to follow up with patients. Maybe they've seen my wife and they've wow, she's amazing. And then I said, how are you doing with this? You just were told you have diabetes. You just were told you have prediabetes. That sucks. Did you have time to be mad? Did you have time to, don't be mad at your spouse. They're near and dear. They're close. They're easy. They're safe. Try not to do it, or at least warn them if you're going to do that. Did you have time to mourn and think about it? Which way do you want to go? Do you want to work on weight loss more? Can you not do it right now? Where are you in your life? And then help them find the way. When I lay out all these tools ahead of them, they might choose one I know is not statistically the highest, but they made the choice. I'm greedy, I already told you that. I follow up, I make sure we're getting on course, I make sure we have the other things. But what an opportunity we have for 98 million people who we can stop early in their disease. We can keep their cells of the body healthy. It's time. You are the experts in your areas. You know who those people are. You know that someone's sitting in the room, a loved one listening, as you're treating someone with diabetes, and they're taking mental notes like, oh, yeah, that sounds like me, or oh, that's my sister. So do we use stage 1 and stage 2? We know that those with an A1C of 6.0 and above are at more risk. Take note of them. If you don't have time, try to address them. Try to put them as a priority in your thoughts and in how you address those patients. More will be coming. So you'll get this article probably and say, I met that guy. I saw his pretty curly-headed wife and their little dog. And we're part of it. You know, there's a lot of people who are working on this. We want it to make sense for you. That's why my wife and I, as primary care, we try to make all these high-level things. How do we apply this? How do we make this real in our day-to-day lives? But thank you for what you do. Thank you for the care that you give to people. Diabetes, my wife and I don't think we say the word diabetes every day for year and year and year. But thank you for all you do, and thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. We probably have time for one question, if there is anyone with a burning desire. All right. Dr. Miller, I believe will be...
One.
Oh, you have
I have one, but only if no one else is going to go. So I was curious as I was listening to you talk, and this might have been like 15 years ago, give or take 5 years. I'm bad with time. But a lot of the stuff you would have said, like, are you at risk for prediabetes? Even if your blood sugar wasn't high, we would have called it metabolic syndrome instead. And even the charts you had from Dr. Bergenstahl, I saw they were dated 2005. He says metabolic syndrome, but like that's gone. We don't do that anymore. And I'm just curious about, like, we used to be further up the stream, or at least we talked about it. I don't know that we did much with it, but I'm curious about that.
I mean, no, I do. I tell patients that, just kind of what you said. You know, what is, because why? Why does that become important? Because it's showing that this is happening throughout the body, to your point, right? Because we're not just glycemic centric, you know, and glucose isn't the only thing we're looking at. So that's where I think that's valuable, that this is happening throughout the body. It affects other systems. I don't know why. You know, things trend. We're all trendy. We like different words. We wear different clothes at different times. I think it can be that simple, what's popular in culture, what we're chasing. But you're right. I think the key point here is what helps your patient. And if talking about that helps your patient, if you go and say, hey, this metabolic syndrome, you have low HDL, you have high LDL, you have hypertension, you have central obesity. Oh, I think you have this collection called metabolic syndrome. You know, if that touches them, I think you use it.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Miller.